Hello.
Oh, no,
sorry.
I thought I was saying hi.
Yeah, you are. Sorry.
Oh, okay, hi. God, get out of here.
Sorry.
That's okay. Hello. Welcome to the first of however many podcasts we decide to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, one podcast, but how many episodes?
Okay, well, that's what I mean.
No, it's
one
okay.
podcast, I don't know how many episodes, but welcome to the first one. If you're our family or friends and you're like, what the heck are you doing? Or if you're just a random person who's like, I don't know why I'm here. Hello.
Welcome.
So today, what are we talking about?
Well, first, oh yeah, okay.
Oh wait, do you want to explain the name?
Yeah, okay,
Right.
I'll explain the name. So as you can tell, our podcast name is called Comfy Conversations. Because, which is kind of ironic because, I should stop playing with my toes. Anyways, it's ironic because the conversations that we're going to be having are probably not going to be that comfortable. But we are hoping to create a comfortable space for uncomfortable conversations, like a judgment-free zone. And like, this is just our stories and our opinions, and
we may possibly just be screaming into the void.
Yeah.
But in the words of a friend, sometimes screaming into the void is cathartic. So
Exactly. So maybe no one will listen to this, but that's fine because it's
just for us.
just fun to talk and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so this first podcast, we're going to be, well, Naomi's going to be talking about her faith journey.
Yeah.
And then the next episode, I will be talking about my faith journey. And kind of where we're at and stuff.
And then the following ones, not all the episodes will be strictly about our religious upbringing or things that we see in the church, but probably a good portion of it will be. And so if you have no idea about what goes on inside of a Protestant church, and you're like, I did not grow up religious, and you're very curious, well, you can come and listen and hear about our experience. And if you're someone who knows us or just wants to, or is going through something similar and you just want to feel a little validated, then you're more than welcome to listen.
Yeah, and like what we're going to be talking about, this is not to try and discourage anyone or tell anyone what they should or shouldn't believe in.
Oh, yeah.
It's just
No, exactly.
Talking about our experience, like I said. And if you're going through something similar to either of us, we have very different stories, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're going through something similar with us, and hopefully this can make you feel less alone, because I know that it can, well, I guess for me, like, deconstruction of faith, I guess we'll start there, is a scary thing to go through. And especially if you're going through it alone and like all of your friends and family are still really strong believers and you don't really feel like you have anyone to talk to, it can kind of be nice to, even though you can't really talk to us right now because obviously it's a podcast, but just like
You can like comment.
you can comment or like just engaging and hearing other people talk about it is kind of nice as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
And what was I gonna say? I lost what I was gonna say.
Oh crap! Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
The reason why you wanted to start this
right.
podcast.
Yeah.
Go into that.
Well, one of the I guess I sort of wanted to go into explain why I wanted to do this, because I know it sort of started when sorry, just a sec. When was it you and I who started talking? I don't remember who, but anyways, we were talking about where we were in our faith journey, and I was also talking to some friends about some different things that I was going through, and they were going through similar things, and I was like, wait a second, I don't think I'm the only one going through this. And then I found out like you were as well, and like a bunch of other people, and I was like, I feel like we're very much not the only one, so I want to talk about it. And on top of that, like, I was so vocal growing up about my faith.
Right.
Like, it was the main part of my identity, and I was very much trying to use social media and like everything that I was doing in life, whether it was university or wanting to be a teacher, or everything that I did was revolved around the idea of not just God, but also the church community.
Right.
And like we were there upwards of at least 3 times a week.
Yeah. There Sunday, Wednesday, Friday, and sometimes Tuesdays and Thursdays. But sometimes I would even just go to the church just to hang out with people there.
Exactly.
And so I really...
Like, it was like our second home.
Yeah, it was kind of like every day was kind of at the church.
Yeah, which to some people I'm sure seems wild. Like, they can't even, like, for people who've never even stepped into a church, they're like, that was the place where we always were.
Yeah, our whole life. Well, like, we were basically kind of, like, born into the church. I mean, we'll go into that later.
We'll go into that,
but.
yeah. Oh, I remember what I was going to say, it can be, just going off of what you were saying before, where it can be so scary to like say that maybe you're having questions or doubts if you don't have people that you know are accepting of you having maybe not a super super strong faith at that moment, right? And like for me, the only reason that I feel comfortable doing this is because like I have you, I have my partner and like other friends who I know are not going to judge me. But if this had been like even 4 years ago, I would not be willing to do this because I would be losing 95% of my friends at that point. Or at least that would be the fear that I'm going to be losing my entire community.
Right, yeah. I think even like a year ago or even just a few months ago for me, I don't think I would have. Well, for me, excuse me.
Sexy.
For me, I kind of came to the conclusion of that I would like to deconstruct my faith just a month ago. So even like 2 months ago, this would have been a scary thing for me, and the thing be like, no, like, but this episode is not my story, so I'm not gonna go too much into that because I'll be going into that next week. But yeah.
All right. So I wrote out a script. Because, well, not really a script. I just wrote out my stream of consciousness last night while also finding a bunch of facts. Because if anybody who knows me knows that I love research. I love it with an undying passion. That has been, like, what brings me joy all of my life. If I don't know anything, I'm like, to Google I go. To Google Scholar. Time to find statistics. But anyways, so yeah, I wasn't really sure where I wanted to start about how I got where I am, because like that's almost a quarter of a decade's worth of a story. So this is very, very, very condensed. Right. So I figured most of the story is going to start around 2015, 2016, but I think a bit of backstory is important to understand. So I'm not going to go too much into our childhood, but like, it is a little bit relevant, I think.
Right.
So we grew up in a predominantly white evangelical Christian community, despite being mixed. And we spent all of our childhood and adolescence, like we were saying, in a church setting, to the point where, like I said, like we were there like Sunday. In my brain, there's something that happened on Mondays, but I don't remember what it was. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I don't remember. Wednesday night Bible study, Friday night like youth group hangout, Saturdays sometimes we would have volunteering things that we did with them. Because we were on the praise and worship team, we would sometimes be there Saturday nights as well, or like other days of the week. So like you were saying, like we were there a lot. Like,
yeah. Well, and also like when we were older, we would volunteer for. Well, I don't know for you, but for me, I would volunteer at a kids club, which was like as a leader.
I didn't. The kids scared me. I tried to volunteer for Sunday school one time, and then I just like broke down in tears. And our youth pastor was like, "Okay, you should go back to the service. I don't think this is working out." Right. And I was like, "I also don't think that."
That's fair.
So yeah, like, but you were very, very much encouraged to like participate and get involved in everything, because that was what it meant to be a good and faithful Christian, right? Like, was to be involved in church activities and ministry, because we're called to evangelize to other people.
And if you weren't really involved, then you were kind of seen as like a lukewarm Christian. You weren't like judged inherently, but you're kind of people would question you like, oh, why aren't you involved in the church?
Yeah, you definitely get like sideways glances.
Yeah,
metaphorically speaking. But yeah, so that's where we grew up. And eventually, because I was so involved, I became, at the age of 18, which this is terrible, I don't know why anybody thought this was a good idea. At the age of 18, I became the secretary, the custodian, and the interim volunteer youth pastor at the age of 18, right after graduating high school. I was in charge of a bunch of like 30 and 40-year-old adults, telling them what, like, because like
30 and 40-year-olds.
Yeah, because I helped lead the sponsors. Like, we'd have meetings and I'd be up there being like, okay, this is what we're doing.
Oh, really? I had no idea.
Yep. So
interesting.
It was it was a time. I got very burnt out.
Yeah, no doubt.
And
well, in youth group, like, you weren't even getting paid for that. Like, you were getting paid for custodian and secretary, but not for youth group.
Not for youth group. And it was such an unhealthy dynamic, having just left high school.
Right.
And then now being in charge of people who were my friends. And like who I'd grown up with. So it was like I was in charge of my friends and having to tell them, hey, you need to not do this. And of course, like, they were looked at me like, oh, okay, I won't do it anymore, like, wink wink. And I was like, no, please.
Right. Yeah.
I'll get in trouble if you do.
Please stop.
But yeah, so yeah, that was that. And as much as I'm saying that, like, I'm not saying that to complain about the amount of time that we spent there, because like I enjoyed being there. It felt safe and it felt loving at the time, and it was where, yeah, like I said, like where I felt safe and comfortable. That's where all my friends were. That's where I went to, like, I guess for lack of better words, like a spiritual oasis, and so, like, that's where I felt like I could be myself, right? And as much as, like, going to church when we were younger wasn't voluntary, like, everything I'd say past the age of 15 was 100% voluntary. Like, that was what I wanted to do. But growing up, I always had a lot of questions. As we all know, I asked so many questions growing up, and I was always like, no, why? And everyone's like, shut up. But one of the things was why people hated science so much, because I very much in my mind, I remember one time at church because growing up I always wanted to be a scientist, right? Or for the most part. I was like, science, yes. I was just like a little nerd. I named my hamster Bernoulli because he was my favorite scientist at the time.
Well, even when we were younger, your presents would be like a microscope kit or like a science kit and stuff like that.
Just a little nerd. Yeah, so I remember always being like, I want to be a scientist. And I specifically remember somebody at church, I don't remember who it was. It could have been a family member, it could not have been, I don't remember. But they were like, oh, that's nice, but remember, you can't believe everything that science tells you, because sometimes they lie. And I just distinctly remember that being the moment when I realized that adults could be dumb. Because, like, sorry. It's okay. Because I just, like, prior to that as a kid, right, you see adults and you're like, wow, they are all-knowing. Right. Like, they are so big and they know everything that's going on. Like, wow. And I just remember someone telling me that and I'm like, no, I'm going to not listen to you.
I think you're wrong.
I think you're wrong. But it was, yeah, so I don't remember how, I was like 6 or 7 or something at the time. And, yeah, so it was very funny. But there was also, like, a lot of things that I didn't question, though. Right. Like, even though I had a lot of I was very much like what some people would call a progressive Christian, I guess, even at a younger age. Somewhat, yeah, I guess.
Progressive for how...
for where we were. Yeah. For the context. Because I was not progressive, but where I was progressive. Because I was like, I had this idea, I was like, women are equal to men. I don't want a man to be the head of the household. That sounds gross. And everyone was like, how dare you? You must serve your husband. Or I was like, I don't want to be a stay-at-home mom. And they were like, oh, you'll change your mind. And I know that's not strictly to the church, but I get that a lot more at the church than I got it anywhere else. But like, yeah, so there was a lot of things that I just like didn't question as well. So when we were younger, it was like, oh, gay people are bad, and I was like, that sounds right. And they were like, drinking, that's a sin, and I was like, yes, very
Absolutely.
bad. Absolutely. So we had our cousins visiting, and we went to the Wednesday night Bible study because like our whole family is Christian, essentially. Like, not everyone, but like majority.
Over half.
Yeah, well over
half. Yeah.
So we brought our cousins with us to a Bible study, and the pastor was deciding that was a a good time to talk about homosexuality, and I don't remember if he touched on like the idea of the gay agenda or not.
No, he didn't. He just kind of said, well, he didn't like deliberately say homosexuality or like talk about gays. He did.
Yeah, because
I just know that he made like there was like a triangle, and he said a real marriage is between a man, a woman, and God. And so if you don't have that in a marriage, it's not a real marriage. I remember that being said.
Oh, I remember that part. But the part that for me stuck out the most was when he was like, this is how men think and this is how women think, and there is no cross in between. If you're a woman, if you're a woman, then your first instinct is to open up emotionally, and then after that physically. And it was like this thing of like, that's how it worked. Whereas I was like, no, like that's not. And he was like, for men it's physical, which is why men want sex more than women. And he's like, and then after they feel comfortable, they'll be willing to be like emotionally vulnerable. And I remember being like, I'm much closer to like, I'm so much more, I don't like being emotionally vulnerable, not because I don't think it's good, and I say this as I'm being emotionally vulnerable, but like
I think I know what you mean.
Yeah, whereas
like in a sense, like it took you a long time to get here as well. Like I know, like growing up, you didn't really like to talk about issues.
Yes.
And you would be like, oh no, I'm feeling sad, I don't like this, I'm going to distract myself.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. Whereas when it came to like relationships and stuff like that, and especially when I got like, not to go into too much information, but like when I got into university and was able to like just do whatever I wanted, basically I was much more open to the idea of being physical with someone as opposed to being emotionally vulnerable with them. Which like whether or not that's healthy is a completely different discussion.
Yeah.
but that's how I was. And I remember being like, I remember talking to someone about it, but I don't remember who it was, and I was like, but I'm much more like that. And they're like, maybe you think you are, but you're not. And I was like, oh, sorry. Maybe I think I am, and I'm not.
Forgot, I don't know who I am.
Yeah, exactly. To go back to what we were saying, yeah, like there was a lot of things that we were just like, oh, I believe it, yeah, because you told me so, and like grew up believing that. So, yeah, so.
Also, this is not an attack on the pastor, because I
no, of course not.
think that he's a cool dude.
Yeah,
I don't agree with everything that he thinks or says, but he knows that. So
yeah, I know exactly. Like we've never been shy about like disagreeing with people in the church at all.
Well, you
okay,
more so.
I
Me, I am still scared to speak my mind because I don't want to be attacked, which is kind of sad that people have to feel that way. But I know it's not just me. I know there's people who are on the other side who feel that as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, people just need to stop being dicks.
Yeah. Stop having genitals.
Yeah, exactly. But yes.
That's a joke. Just in case anyone was not aware. Anyways, keep going.
Anyways, yeah. So, anyways, that's my explanation of who we are. Sorry, that took way longer than I anticipated. I guess it's not that bad. That was like 10 minutes. But anyways, yeah. So I guess when I started to seriously question things would probably be 2015, 2016. And then I was around 19 or 20-ish. So I was like just becoming like an adult in training, sort of.
Adult in training.
Yeah, well, I'm like, all my friends were like, oh my goodness, we're adults. I was like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
And no, I am not. I cannot take care of myself. What do you mean I'm an adult?
Like I'm barely an adult. And yes, I'm married, but I'm still barely an adult.
So it was like 19, 20-ish. And 2015, I spent most of my time traveling. And I feel almost bad about it because the way that I talk to people about it currently is a lot more of a cleaner version of what happened.
Right.
Not to you guys, but to like people at the university.
Right.
I tell everybody I did a year traveling and doing charity work.
Oh.
Which is not wrong, but it's not the entire story.
Right.
Where I was there and I was doing a lot of evangelical mission work, right? They were teaching us how to be missionaries. And now as I look back on that, I currently am very against the idea of missions trips and other even long ones, just because it borders on to this idea of colonialism that I really don't like. And that was something that I didn't understand until I got better anti-racist education.
Right.
And that's a really complicated topic that I can't go into right now because that's like an entire episode on its own.
We can go into
that. Oh, okay. But I was gonna say like that was what I spent my entire year doing, was like a mixture between what is actual charity work and what is trying to convert people to Christianity.
Right.
The stuff where I was like going out and trying to talk to people about God, I'm like, cringe.
Right.
Cringe.
Yeah.
And 2015 was also the year when former President Donald Trump was started his campaign started to get more traction.
Right.
I guess. And the idea of him becoming a viable candidate for the American election was like becoming more realistic, I guess. And as much as I know that everybody is always like, why do you have to bring politics into it? It's like, but I don't currently know how anybody can talk about the past 4 years without saying that politics, whether or not it's their own countries or the American election, has affected their life. Like, and this is where I got some stats. Okay. So approximately 94 million people believe that they have been stressed by politics, 44 million believe that they have lost sleep, 28.5 million that their physical health has been adversely affected, and 11 million that politics led them to consider suicide, though particular caution surrounds behavior that are less common. So it's like, again, to say that politics has not affected the like global climate is just completely avoiding something that has caused a lot of people inner turmoil and stress and like even like suicidal thoughts. So like to ignore that is just completely putting something out of the equation.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk about politics because it's important.
And politics is becoming so big now, and like it's involved in everything. And literally there's some people that will only talk about politics.
Yeah.
It's like they don't know how to talk about anything else other than that. And so kind of like, guess, I don't know, if they can talk about it so openly, and
I would also like to be able to express my opinion, like how I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not a bad thing to talk about politics. So as long as you're not being hostile and stuff like that, which a lot of people are, but we're not trying to do that. So.
Yeah, exactly. And so I guess on top of the politics also brought in a lot of internal conflict within the church. So 8 in 10 white evangelical Protestants say that the phrase "fights for what I believe in" describes Trump very well or fairly well, including roughly half who say this describes him very well. And a big part of that, like how large the number of evangelical, like the percentage is so large of evangelical Christians that were very pro-Trump.
Yeah.
And just because you're conservative doesn't mean that I am immediately like, you're a bad person, I don't like you.
Right.
But if you try to tell me that Donald Trump represents the Christian ideology, what?
Yeah,
no, he does
definitely not.
Like, you can say that, and these are all not the most valid statistics, but where people will be like, he's a good businessman, like he helped the economy, like all these things. There's other stuff that goes into that, but like, fine, whatever, use those arguments, but do not come and say like, I'm voting for him because he upholds my Christian values.
Right.
I'm like, no, he does not. No, he does not. And I think the best quote that I saw, I don't know who said it, but they were like, Donald Trump loves marriage. So, because there's a whole Christian idea of like what we're using for what the perfect marriage is, like between man, woman, and God, and like you're never supposed to break that. Do not get divorced. All that kind of stuff. And someone was like, Donald Trump loves marriage so much that he did it 3 times. And like, I thought it was very funny because like, again, I don't care that he got divorced. Like, whatever, he can do whatever he wants, live his life. But to say like, this man is, we should put him on the pedestal, he definitely represents who we are as a community, is like, no, he does not.
Well, that's the thing as well, because in the Bible it says that we're not supposed to get divorced, unless you're in an abusive situation.
Yeah.
But no one talks about that. Not that I agree with that, but
that is something
that is what it is in the Bible. So if you want to uphold Christian biblical values, why you're not talking about that? And why are you saying, oh, it's okay for a divorced person, but it's not okay to be gay? It's like, why?
Yeah. Why are those the things you can gloss over?
It's like Donald Trump, he's been divorced 3 times, but he's a very Christian man. But then there's another Christian pastor who is gay, and he has a male partner.
Yeah.
And he's not a real Christian.
Yeah. Or same with like one of my friends, the church that they go to is pastored by a lesbian who has a lesbian partner who's also a pastor at another church. And I'm like, that's so cool. But yeah, anyways, not the point.
That's a rabbit trail, but this is something that bugs me, the double standard. And it's just, anyways.
No, definitely. So I guess when around that time was when I started, like 2015, 2016 was when I started to see a lot more hidden racism within our community. And even though like the church calls these other places like third world countries, right? And they're like, oh, Mexico's a third world country, like all this stuff. They do not want you to come to our place. Do not bring your third worldness into our country. Like that's the vibe I get. I'm not saying that's 100% what it is, but like the idea of an illegal immigrant just like scares them so much.
Which I also find funny as like if for someone who has Christian values to say that, because isn't that whole like you're supposed to be accepting and loving and love your neighbor. Well, if you're telling them don't come to my country, that's not really being a loving neighbor.
So and I have some verses here where it's Proverbs 14:21. Whoever despises his neighbor is a sinner, but blessed is he who is generous to the poor. And like Proverbs obviously is just like a bunch of like really wise things, but we always talk about it as if it's like the highest form of wisdom because it was written by Solomon, who is supposed to be bestowed wisdom upon by God, right? So we are supposed to hold what he says in reverence because he was given this wisdom from God, right? Or Acts 20:35, in all things I have shown you that by working hard in this way we must help the weak and remember the words of the Lord Jesus, how he himself said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. So like where is all of that when I hear Christians saying like, oh, we don't want them in here, they don't deserve it, like, or I even heard the argument of like people like, well, I got to where I am through all my hard work, and what they come to this country and they're just handed things. And I'm like, what about the parable in the Bible where there's like the different talents, right? And so the one guy goes out and he hires someone for the entire day. He's like, I'll pay you this much money, so like I say like $15. Then at lunch he goes out and he finds another one. He's like I'll pay you $15, but he's doing half the number of hours of the original guy, right? And then near like there's only an hour of the day left, he goes out and hires another person. It's like, I will also give you $15. So $15 is like the flat rate across the board for getting these work. This is a parable. And the first guy that he hired at the end complained. He's like, why did he get $15 when he did 1 hour of work and I did 8 hours of work, right? And the guy who hired him said, well, shouldn't you be happy that this guy got $15, like he needed it more or something along those lines. But the point of the story is to show us that as Christians we should not be bitter about other Christians who maybe have accepted God right at the end of their life, right? It's like, oh, that's not fair, you gotta go to heaven, even though I was a Christian for my entire life and they were only for like half an hour. But should we not similarly like be thinking that about people who are suffering in other countries, and like when they get to come here and escape what is a threatening lifestyle, what is their life being threatened every day, like should we not be happy that these human beings don't have to be suffering anymore and that they didn't have to work as hard as we did? Like I would much rather someone have an easier life than just because my life was difficult yours has to be as well.
Yeah, well, and that's the same thing, like you can see that in older generations as well, where they're like, oh, kids these days have it so easy. Like back in my day, we had to, walk hills to school, so you should too. And like, but now you have all this technology. It's like, wasn't that the goal? Isn't the goal to make things easier for other people? And like, even if you had to do a lot of hard work, that hard work was so that someone else doesn't have to go through that. The point of your hard work should be to teach people to appreciate what it is that they have, not that they shouldn't get it at all. Well, and then there's also the argument where people are like, well, I don't care if I want people to come to this country, but I want them to do it legally. Well, it's like, do you know the process that it takes to come to a country? I mean, this is a whole other conversation.
Imagine having the privilege to say, well, just come here normally. Like, you have never experienced what it is like, because most of the people that we grew up with would not know the experience of what it is to try and get an international visa from what is deemed as a third world country that has liabilities of illegal immigration and everything like that, when you're just trying to get your grandparents to be able to come down for a couple months.
Yeah.
Like, it's not as easy as people would think.
Yeah, and that's just visiting. Like, imagine moving.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
Somewhere. So yeah. Anyways.
But yeah, so exactly. So I got to see like a lot more hidden racism in it, because people would be talking about that and they'd be like, oh, Mexicans, whatever, because like they would forget that I'm Mexican because we're super pale, right. And I'd be like, oh, fun fact,
Ew. I'm
Mexican, and I can be like, they're definitely not all, in the words of Donald Trump, like rapists and sending their worst.
Or druggies.
Yeah. And a lot of what I would get back is, oh, yeah, you're right. You know, I'm not trying to generalize, but like, statistically, there are more, like, illegal immigrants are more likely to commit crime. But that is very much not the case. Relative to undocumented immigrants, U.S.-born citizens are over 2 times more likely to be arrested for violent crimes, 2.5 times more likely to be arrested for drug crimes, and over 4 times more likely to be arrested for property crimes. All of this stuff will be cited, and whether it's at the end or something, I don't know, but it'll all be cited, because this is all studies that have been done and peer-reviewed and everything like that. So I'm not just like pulling this out of my ass and being like, here's some numbers. But yeah, so I don't understand why people were pushing for the idea of what he was saying was true, like pushing so hard for it,
right?
Instead of saying, like, just being like, yeah, he's a terrible, and some people did. They were like, yeah, he's a terrible human being. Still gonna vote for him because Hillary's worse, but he's a terrible human being. I'm like, I don't respect your decision, but, well, like, what, I mean, I do, but, like, I don't think it was the right decision, but I respect that more than the people who were like, Donald Trump is the best, right. And, like, he is great, and I'm like, but he's not, and it's okay to say that he's not. Yeah. Because I didn't think Hillary was good. No. Like, I'm not like, oh, Hillary is, sure, an icon for being a woman in power, which right. is very hard to do. Was she the best? No. Like, right. I don't put her on a pedestal for anything other than saying, good job getting where you are, right. in the sense of being a woman in power, because that is hard. But, like, other than that, it's like, girl, only about 15% of white evangelicals, though, say that morally upstanding describes Trump very well, while another 45% says the term applies to Trump fairly well. So that's over 50% of white evangelicals, at the very least, saying that morally upstanding is like, he's pretty morally upstanding. And I'm like, no, he's not. He has over 40, like, sexual assault and rape allegations against him. Like, how is that? And then, like, Bill Clinton got impeached because, and then later villainized Monica Lewinsky for giving him a blow in, like, the Oval Office or whatever, which we can definitely bleep that out, but it's just stupid.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't know. I began to see a lot. That was just, I guess, a political rant, but it was I began to see this, like, different God in the church, right. than the one that they were preaching about. It was like this God of capitalism and anti-socialism and right. and just very, like, that you have to think this way, and if you don't think this way, then you're not a good Christian. Right.
Versus where in the church we're taught that God is all loving and God is forgiving and accepting. Yeah. And, you know, come as you are, and Jesus died for your sins and you are forgiven. But then when politics comes in, when I found when Christians talk about politics, their whole demeanor changes. Yeah. Like, they become, like, kind of hateful. Yeah. It's, like, maybe not directly hateful, but it seems like there's, like, anger in their eyes, and it's like, they're very passionate and very, and it just seems backwards of what is preached in the church.
Yeah. Similar to, like, because I think one of the things that got me thinking about this was like Rhett and Link's talking about their deconstruction of faith, right? And one of the things that Rhett said, and I don't want to steal it from you for saying this because I like you pointed it out one of the times when we were talking, where he's like, a lot of the time, because like statistically it is shown that like a lot of people from our generation are leaving the church and becoming what they would describe as non-religious.
Right.
And one of the things that Rhett commented on their podcast was that they were like, a lot of people are saying, oh, we didn't teach them good enough. We didn't teach them enough about Jesus, enough about God. That's why they're leaving. And it's like, no, that's the exact opposite. Like, you did teach us. You taught us about this loving God, this kind God who created us to be in his image, right, and to love us, and so that we could love him, and pardon?
And to be equal, sorry.
Yeah, and to be equal. But we are taught the exact opposite of that, and there's so much shame brought on, and so much hatred, and rules that you have to follow, and all these things, because otherwise you're not a good enough Christian.
Yeah, then you're lukewarm.
You're a lukewarm Christian. And so yeah, I just began to see that all these things were not lining up with what I had been taught my entire life, and I started to question it, and it was I'm just trying to.
Well, and to finish what Red had said, was like, it's not that we weren't taught enough or we weren't taught right. Like, people would be like, oh my gosh, like, where did we go wrong? We didn't teach you enough. It's like, it's no, that's not true. Like, you did teach us, and what we're seeing is we're not seeing what you taught us in the church.
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah, there's a couple of other things here that I wrote down that was about my life growing up in Moosomin, but like, I think I'm gonna skip over that for time's sake, because like that can be another conversation, because this is not about my life growing up in the church, it's about how I got to where I am currently. So but anyways, we're gonna skip over to 2017, where I began to attend university here in this city. So I moved over here. I basically left everything. I left our community. I knew a couple of people in the city, but not really. I knew my roommate, who we'd grown up together, and I had one other friend in the city and a cousin, I think. Yeah, so it was like max like three. No, and another friend. Okay, there was like four. Fine, there was 4 people I knew in the city. But either way, I like didn't have a ton of friends. But as soon as I moved, I was like, gotta try and find a home church, gotta find a youth group, because in my mind, I was like, yeah, I gotta keep the same lifestyle, because that was the lifestyle I was used to and that I was comfortable with. So I started to attend one where I had some friends, and there was like a very well-known small, like, young adults group, and there's a lot of young adults that attend there, and yeah, so I started trying to sort of like put my feelers out, like, well, where are some good Christian communities in this area, and then I also began to make friends in my classes who were not Christians, and up until this point, I had not really ever had any friends who were non-Christian,
right,
or at least not any friends with super deep connections. And so I began to like get to know like one of my best friends now. Them and we would go out for coffee dates every Friday and like just talk about life. And they were like one of my best friends, and they were the person that I felt so safe with, like even talking about my religion, even though they themselves are not religious. And they were like so open to talk to me about it. And they were like, oh yeah, like tell me about what you think and all this stuff. Because and so I began to see that the way the church had painted non-Christians, for me anyways, was totally off from what I was experiencing. Where, I don't know, this could have been just the way that I took it, but the way that I thought of non-Christians was previously was like these empty wandering souls that felt lost and lonely, and they knew that, or they couldn't see it, but they didn't know it, but they really were. They had so much missing, and just like these voids of humans walking around that are missing God, right?
Yeah, well, and we're taught, like I remember being told this a lot, is that, you know, everyone in the world is searching for something, but what they don't realize, like they have this emptiness inside them, and what they don't realize is that that emptiness is God.
Yeah.
And so the non-Christians, they're always going to feel lost.
Yeah, exactly. And so the more I got to know more non-Christians, the more I was like, that is very not correct the way I saw it. But like, whatever, like it is, like they're just mistaken, whatever, blah, blah. But the reason I stopped going to church regularly, or that church specifically, was I specifically remember one sermon that we were having. This was the sermon that caused me to stop going, where the pastor was on the stage, and he started asking the people in the crowd, the congregation. He was like, "How do people outside of the church see us?" And they were all like, "Oh, like judgmental and like prudes and all these like really negative words." And he's like, "But what are we actually?" And then like they were all like, "Oh, we're a family, we're loving, we're accepting, we're tolerant," and all these things. And then after that it was like, "Oh, how does the world see themselves?" And they're like, "Progressive," and all the stuff. And then later he's like, "But what is the world actually?" And they were like, "Oh, lost, scared." And it was just the fact that it wasn't just a speaker on top talking at us. It was an actual dialogue between the person on stage and the people in there, having this dialogue about how like poor us, while we're sitting in this giant church that has its own gym, that has a giant like sound system, has people working and volunteer, like it's a huge building. And they literally just added what I can only imagine is upwards of $1 million worth of an extension to their church building, sitting in there saying that, like, poor us, and everyone outside is bad. Just to me, I was like, I really don't like that. Like, why are we demonizing these people who we say that we want to show love to? And it just made me feel so gross.
Right.
And so I was like, I don't want to go here. And a lot of people were like, "But you could have been the change within." And I was like, when you are a lot of the time you are the company that you keep. And it's so easy to get pulled into that idea and to that ideology, because I was. And so I was like, I don't want to be there anymore. Like, I don't think that I personally am enough to make a big change there. And maybe I was wrong, maybe I was giving up, but that was where I was at. I was like, I can't go here anymore. And on top of that, there were other reasons that I sort of stopped going to on-campus things, but that's just personal drama that I really don't want to get into.
Yeah.
But for personal reasons, I ended up stopping going to on-campus ministries. One of them I stopped going to because I just didn't like what they're preaching. The other one I stopped going to for personal reasons. And so I was sort of like just in a limbo, but then eventually, so this was around the end of my first year in university, and around that time as I started dating a guy who was Catholic. And the amount of shit that I got for dating someone who's Catholic was just like so stupid, because I was like, he's a Christian, he follows God, like what more do you want? They're like, but right. Catholics.
Yeah, I remember even people would talk to me and they'd be like, "Oh, so Naomi's dating someone. Is he a Christian?" And I'm like, "Well, he's Catholic." So like, yeah. And then they're like, "Oh, he's Catholic." And I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Oh, well, tell her to be careful." And I'm like, "No."
No, I will not.
I think if he says he believes in God and he is a Christian and he believes, like, I'm not going to tell him he's wrong because he's Catholic.
Yeah, like, exactly. It was so annoying. And it was just so stupid. And yeah, so the reaction was very negative. And then later on in my second year, I had probably the most stressful experience, like one of the biggest depressive episodes I've ever had in my life. And so there's a lot of stress and there was a lot of different things. Later on, we decided to move in together, and also later on, I decided to come out. I decided to come out as bisexual, which was something I'd been struggling with since like probably grade 7, 8-ish. But I had only actually accepted when I was in high school. But then I was like, I'm not going to tell anyone. And then later on, I was like, I should probably tell people. But then, so all this stuff came out. Like, I was dating Catholic. I moved in with him, and then I later came out as bisexual. And I had some people who didn't talk to me for like 6 months after that, which was really hard. And like some of them, like some people have like come around now. I think most of them, like, I don't know that there's anyone who doesn't talk to me currently because of that, which is nice, which is very good, and I very much appreciate that. But the fact that people didn't talk to me for like 6 months still, like, that hurt so much. I didn't know if I was going to lose my friends or not, and I'm sure some people would be like, why did you stay friends with them? Great question. I love them a lot. I grew up with them. We went through so much stuff, and like our relationships, I would say now, are actually stronger than they were before. So I'm glad that I'm friends with them. But that doesn't mean that time didn't hurt so much, and like that time caused me, like, I cried multiple times because like, am I losing my friends because of my life decisions that don't impact them in any way? Like, it sucked and it hurt, and I'm getting riled up, so I'm just gonna calm down for 2 seconds. So this is the time where we'll go to sponsors.
Our sponsor is God. I'm just kidding.
Just kidding, we don't have sponsors, but if you thought we did, I appreciate the fact that you thought we did. It's a really dumb joke, but I thought it was funny.
It is funny.
Thank you.
We definitely have sponsors.
Yeah. Thanks, Mom.
Mom's my sponsor, and my husband is my sponsor.
Yeah. I was like, sorry, I was thinking at the same time when I heard, my Mom's my sponsor and my husband. And you like took a pause there, so I was like, Mom's my sponsor, comma, and my husband. Like, Mom, it just.
I don't understand it, but that's
okay,
great. We're sidetracked.
So yeah, but around the time when I was actually dating him, when we were going to his parish regularly near the end of our relationship, actually, we were going to the parish regularly. We wanted to attend there. We were talking about like when we had kids, how we wanted to bring them up in the church and all this.
The parish? Sorry, what?
Oh, that's the Catholic version of like a church.
Oh, okay.
That's just what they call their building.
Right.
So yeah, we would attend mass. And we were like, we were starting to get involved, like we were trying to get involved in the choir and the youth ministry and all this stuff, because I was like, yeah, that's the life I'm used to. That's what I want to go back to. And so that was probably roughly around 2 years ago. And I was really happy there. It was actually a really nice community. But then that relationship crashed and burned. So I stopped going there because I did not want to go there anymore after that. So I stopped attending there. Yeah. So right after that, well, not right after. No, actually, I guess it would have been November. So not that long after we broke up, COVID hit. And around the time it wasn't really political, I don't think, in the very beginning.
No, it wasn't.
And it felt nice. And then all of a sudden, and then later on, not that long after, I'm sure everyone knows, like, George Floyd was killed, the whole Black Lives Matter movement resurfaced. And I saw so much disgusting and hateful rhetoric from evangelical Christians, including family members of ours, talking about like justification for why he was killed,
right,
and trying to justify, well, he was on drugs.
Yeah. They'd be like, oh, well, it's really sad that he died, but he shouldn't have restrained, or he was on drugs.
And it's like, no, you don't, like, just because someone does drugs doesn't mean that they're worthy of having their life taken from them.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, that's not your decision to say, you're right, it was okay for him to have died.
Well, and it's not a cop's decision to be the judge, jury, and executioner.
No, exactly. And so the only people I saw saying all lives matter, which obviously this is anecdotal evidence, like it's just from my own experience, but the only people that I saw saying all lives matter was conservative Christians who I'd grown up with.
Right.
And everyone else was like, and just not understanding the concept of what Black Lives Matter meant, and not even just not understanding it, not trying to understand it.
Yeah.
Trying to also put themselves in it. Like, I matter too. It's like, shut the fuck up. You are not involved in this right now.
Yeah. It's like, you do matter, but you're not being oppressed right now.
Yeah, exactly.
You may think you are, but that's a different conversation. Yeah. And you're not.
And I think that's one of the lucky things that we had growing up, being not just what, like, our dad's from Mexico and our mom is from Canada. So I've experienced a little bit of racism, nowhere near what other people have experienced. But we also got to see, also funny enough, all the racism was just when I'm with dad and talking Spanish.
Yeah.
Oh, crazy. But we got to see what it is like we got to see all the racism that was aimed towards our dad.
Yeah,
right?
what it's like to not be white, because there's a lot, like, when you're white, and it's not to say that, I don't know how to word this properly without offending anyone. Like, I don't want to offend anyone. It's not like it's a bad thing to be white, because you can't help the color of your skin, and that's kind of the whole point of, like, Black Lives Matter and everything, because it doesn't matter what your skin color is or what race you are, because we're all equal. We're all human.
Right.
Anyways, shoot, I forgot the point of what I was saying.
But, like, moral of the story, like, we also can't pretend. We got to see if you are white, it doesn't mean that your life is not difficult. There's a lot of people who are white who have very difficult lives. Like, that is not diminishing that by any means. But what we are saying is your life is not difficult because of the color of your skin. Yeah,
that's not an added thing. Like, you do, like, people are like, white privilege. Like, stop saying that. I'm not privileged. It's like, well, you are privileged in a sense because of your white skin. But not to say that that doesn't make that you have a perfect life, or that life is
that you didn't
easy.
have to work hard.
Yeah,
like so I saw a lot of that, and it was really hurtful, because especially with people who and especially because when you're white passing, people are willing to tell you what they actually think when they think that you're on their side. And it's really harmful when it feels like there's that hidden part of us of, like, I'm not like, I get the privilege. Like, I always felt a lot of guilt growing up being white passing but having a Mexican heritage, because I always felt really connected to that.
Right.
But when anybody finds out, it's like, oh, you speak Spanish, you're Mexican, they're like, wow, you don't look like it. I'm like, I know.
I don't look like
it. Because I got to see firsthand, like, what that privilege looks like. Yeah. And I personally cannot say that we don't have privilege. We do. Yeah. I've gotten away with so much shit that I know that people of color would never have gotten away with. And as well, like, I never got stopped in the airport. I've never gotten randomly searched, whereas Dad, every single time, especially in the United States, like, sorry, this is a completely different different topic. Either way, the racism of it all was very apparent and very hurtful,
and especially seeing it from people in the church.
Yeah, exactly.
Was really confusing and backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was people who said that they would love us the most that were inadvertently telling us, like, no.
Yeah.
After that, masks became political. Oh, my goodness. And it's just, it's not hard to wear a mask, and it's not about you. Like, the whole idea of Christianity is not about us. It's not supposed to be about you. It's supposed to be about everybody else and loving and caring for those people. So the fact that the majority of the anti-maskers that I know are Christians just doesn't make sense, because the point of it is to protect other people. So the turning point for me recently this year, because I keep saying turning points as if, but, like, each turn was like a 5-degree turn until I eventually got to 180. But one of the big things was I got into a bit of an argument because in Alberta there was that pastor, right, who was like, I'm gonna have groups larger than we're legally allowed to. And I was like, that's super not okay. And then he got arrested because the police eventually gave him a bunch of warnings, right? And then he was like, well, too bad. And it's not like he wasn't allowed to congregate. He just had to have a limited number of congregants.
Same with every other
Same
church.
With every other
everything.
building.
Yeah, not just churches, but
yeah. And he decided, no, that's not okay. That's infringing on my rights. So he encouraged his church, which had a lot of congregants, to come and worship. And so he got arrested and fined. And, well, prior to arrested, he was fined. And then he just did it again. And then he walked himself in and was like, yep, I did it. Arrest me. And then later they were like, okay, we will grant you parole if you promise to follow COVID guidelines. And then you can leave. Like, that's fine. But you'll also be on probation. Like, we're going to make sure that you're following the guidelines. And he was like, no, I will not. And they were like, well, then we can't let you go. Like, crap, what was I saying?
The pastor,
so he got arrested. So I saw a bunch of people posting about it, from family members to people that we grew up with. stuff like posting about it, being like, oh, he was wrongfully arrested and it's so bad.
Yeah, and it's another example of how Christians are being persecuted.
Right, yeah, that was the big thing. Christians are being persecuted in Canada. And it just made me so angry to see Christians claiming to be persecuted while putting the lives of other people in danger. And I was like, this is not even just like funny, I can laugh at it anymore. Like, haha, it's like, this is you genuinely putting other people's lives in danger in the name of God. Like, that's disgusting. That's so gross. Like, that is what taking God's name in vain means. Not saying, oh my God, or like Jesus Christ or something like that. Like, that is the exact definition of what taking the Lord's name in vain is. Doing something to harm his children while saying that you're doing it for him.
Right.
And that it's a just cause, because it's not. And so I got into an argument with one of our childhood friends or whatever, and eventually, and so we got into a bit of an argument on Facebook, because I don't know how to shut up. But everything that they were saying, all of a sudden I realized, I was like, that is something I would have said a couple years ago. But everything that they were saying made me feel super gross.
Right.
Because you could realize it was not a consideration of the other people. It was about what they selfishly wanted under the guise of love. And I realized that was me a few years ago, and I felt so sick and disgusting and gross, knowing that I myself have probably contributed to a lot of the religious trauma of many people, because I was so heavily involved in the church. I was involved in camp. I was involved in all these different forms of indoctrination for a lot of children. And I began to realize that I was just this like little piece that helped this bigger machine of self-hatred and of just really harmful rhetoric. And it just made me all of a sudden realize, like, wait, this is what it's become. I mean, maybe it's not even what it's become. It's what it's been this entire time.
Right.
And I spent like 3 days crying. and like not like the entire, like not like 24/7 crying, but like intermittently, like I'd start thinking about it. I was like, I did so much bad shit like growing up, and like not intentionally. That's the thing, like none of it was malicious. It was all under this feeling of like what I was doing was right.
Right.
But when you realize that you are the villain of a story, it hurts.
Yeah.
But also I wanted to I let myself feel hurt by my own actions, because I was like, if I just ignore these emotions, if I just ignore this guilt that I have, I'm not going to get better. I'm not going to change. I'm not going to never want to do this again, because that guilt is what's going to, that feeling of knowing that I could have fucked up someone, like how someone saw themselves, and like giving that, like helping perpetuate that shame in their life, like that sucks. But I think moving forward, that means that I have to take that and learn from it and try my best to help people to love themselves wherever they are. So I guess right now, long story short, I want to what are we at?
Well, don't know now because we started over. Anyways.
Oh yeah, it's fine. But I guess moral of the story is like, I don't like what the white Christian evangelical church represents right now. It represents a lot of hatred, a lot of divisiveness, a very clear lack of acceptance. And that's not who I want to be. And that is not who I was taught God was. So I still personally, I think, believe in God. But I'm also open to the idea of, like, maybe he's not real. And if he's not, that's okay. So I wouldn't go so far as to say, like, I'm an hopeful agnostic, like what Rhett said. But I'm, like, I'm more open to the possibility of, like, he could not be real. And if he's not, I'm okay with that. But because it's what I've grown up with, I feel comfortable with the idea that there is a God. And I think I'm going to keep going with that belief. But I can't still put myself under the idea, under the term, like, Christian.
Right.
Because
of what's associated with it.
Yeah.
At this moment.
And the harm that I put forward under that title.
Right.
So yeah, I guess that's where I am. And I just want to, like, I guess, encourage other people who are going through similar things of like, you're not alone, and there are people who want to talk to you about what you're thinking and not in a judgmental way.
Mm-hmm.
And
also, if you are having doubts, that you are allowed to look elsewhere other than the Bible, because sometimes that's not helpful. Because when you are doubting in the church, people will be like, well, just pray and read your Bible more, and then it'll be all sorted, when that's not always the case. And it's okay to, I don't know, look into other things.
Talk to people.
Yeah. And it's okay to have doubts. And it doesn't make you a lukewarm Christian or a bad Christian or a bad person anyways.
And like any journey, it's not going to be, if you want to stay in your faith, like your faith isn't going to be linear.
Yeah.
Like anything, like you're going to have times of being like a lukewarm Christian or being super on fire for the Lord or anything like that. And if anyone tells you like you're mad because you're lukewarm, no, this is part of your journey, and you should be okay with wherever you are and moving forward from that.
This was Naomi's faith journey, and next week I'm gonna be talking about my faith journey, if any of you are interested in that.
If you're not, then don't.
If you're not, yeah, don't. I mean, no, if you're not interested, please listen to it anyways. No, just kidding. But yeah, and so we also decided that at the end of our podcast, we would like to give some recommendations of whatever we've been into lately, like whether like an album or a movie or a show, whatever. So, okay, I'll start. So my recommendation is a music album by Noah Cyrus called The End of Everything, and I really enjoy every single song in that album. And I don't know, Noah Cyrus, I just started listening to her like not that long ago, and I really like the album. So if you want to vibe, and it's a pretty sad album, so if you want to be happy, don't listen to it, but it's a good album nonetheless. So
sometimes you just want to listen to things and be sad.
Yeah, sometimes I listen to it even when I'm not sad, but anyways, that's my recommendation.
I have been watching a lot of video essays on YouTube, and one of the channels that I'll go do this. This is what I do. I haven't watched a lot of TV lately because I've been like super busy with homework lately. So basically, what I've been doing is just like putting stuff in the background to listen to as I've been writing my essays. But I found a channel called. Literally just called Sean, SHAUN. He's got like a little skull in it, in his little thumbnail. But he does really good video essays on politics or religion or just like a bunch of different things, because that's what I do with my life, is just watch videos. I just like to do research and hear other people, what research they've done. So yeah, if you enjoy video essays that are entertaining, you can look up Sean.
Just Sean.
Just Sean. That's what it's. Yeah. So, thanks for joining and listening to this. If you made it all the way to the end.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next week.
Goodbye. Bye.